Hey folks, while I'm waiting for my parts for my Fender 59 Bassman, I decided I would rip open this this other Fender Bassman amp that I have and see what's going on with it, see if I can figure out what year it is, etc. And I want to just walk you through a few things here. So this is the Silverface, obviously. This is probably when it was sold to CBS. There's a couple of ways you can figure out what date these things are. One thing I'll note here is on the front it says Bassman only. Now, most of the Silverface that I've seen say Bassman 50 or Bassman 100. This one just says Bassman, and it's hard to tell if something was scratched off here. It looks like someone tried to do something with this. But a couple of other clues. If you're looking here, it says who did the chassis wiring? M. Torres in 1971. So at least I know that this thing is from 1971 or so. So really just looking around, the way you find out what these what year these really are made, because remember, this chassis could have been wired in 1 month or 2 months and something else could have been added 3 months later. You never really know, so it's hard to tell with a Fender. So let me show you how you identify these things, and we'll cover that right back. Alright, so flipping it around the back, there's really no clues here. It says 67 here, but I don't think that means anything. It does say 50 watts, so I know it's a 50 watt amp. But if you look right here, I don't know if you could see this, that's the serial number, and it says A61053. And there's a website that you could go to, that's vintagefender.com, I think, that tells you approximately what year these things are from, and this one does check out to 1971. The problem is that in 1971, this amp could be one of several circuits, and this amp does not tell you what kind of circuit it is. So you have to kind of be a little bit of a detective here, and what you have to do is you have to look at the schematics that are available for that serial number, and it would be an AA270 or an AB165. That's typically what this is going to be. And unfortunately, the only way to figure it out is to look at the schematic and do a little bit of a tracing. So you'll see, for example, that this amp right here doesn't have a rectifier tube, right? But it has diodes in there as rectifiers. And that's indicative right here on the schematic. So I know that this is close. It looks like there's a 50 microfarad cap that's going to ground and is going to the bias trim right here. And if I look on the schematic and try to find that bias trimmer, I'm sure it's around here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it real quick without keeping you too long on this. It's going to be a rheostat somewhere. Anyway, so what you have to do is you have to look this up and try to identify which model amp you're dealing with. But obviously when I got this thing, I did not plug it in. And I want to show you why it's a good idea not to plug this stuff in when you first get it. So let me flip it over, right back. Okay, here's a look at the bottom of the amp, or as you see at the top. And this amp, first of all, here's your transformer, here's your choke, here's your output transformer. And right there is where your 6L6s go. Then you have 3 7025s and a 12 AT7. Underneath this can is where your capacitors are, your filter caps. All right, and the first thing I did when I got this was to take this off and look at it, and look what I found under here. Okay, so first thing you'll notice is these caps are not original. Someone did a recap on this thing, obviously, and they used cheap caps at that. Never heard of these. This one was flapping in the breeze. Look at this right here. Totally disconnected. Not even connected. Not even soldered. Good thing I didn't plug it in. Then you've got a different, this is a 22-500. This is a 22-450. This is another 22-500 right there. And this is a 22-500. This is a 450 100 microfarad, and same thing here, and you'll see that they're reversed, right? So the ground is going to different places. Looking at the schematic on this amp, you'll see that it calls for a 20. Let me get my pointer. So it calls for a 20 here, a 20 here, a 20 here, and an 8. I have 4 22s. 1, 2, 3, 4. It also calls for a 70 and a 70. And I have 100 and 100. Now, it's not uncommon. 70 microfarad caps are not easy to come by. I can't grant you that, and a lot of people do replace these with 100. This one here is supposed to be the 8 microfarad cap. Now, I understand that even Fender, because they were hard to come by, ended up using 16s here instead of an 8. But this person just popped a 22 in there. So I guarantee you this thing doesn't sound as good as it should. And plus, these caps are just, you know, a mixed bag of different types, and they're probably garbage. So I'm going to replace these with Spragues. And obviously, I can't trust anything on this board, right? Because someone mixed it up. I don't know if it's wired correctly, so I'm going to have to trace all this out. And what I'll do is I'll take my voltmeter and touch one leg to ground and one leg to each side of the cap, figure out where the negative side is or the ground side, make sure that these are facing the right direction. I'll test out these resistors, make sure they're good, and of course I will remove these caps and clean this board up. Now, if you take these screws out right here, I'll put that aside. Take this one out. You see that this board flips up, and if you look underneath the board, let's see if you can get in there. There's not enough light. See if we can get some light in there. You'll see that there's just a bunch of jumpers under here, and this is an insulator board. So what I'll end up doing, I think, is stripping this entire board and then reconnecting everything. And I drew myself a diagram of what that looks like here. So I'll follow that. And then once I get to that spot, I get the caps in there, then I'll turn it on and see if it works. Now, I know from working on these in the past that I'm going to have dirty pots. So I'm going to clean these things with some deoxit right here. Deoxit does a really good job. And I'll spray those pots with that and get them clean. And I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do with this faceplate. I know a place where I can get a replacement, and I may just do it for this amp. I already have a Fender Bassman 50. That's my primary amp, actually, which I use to gig. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this one as a spare or sell it. I'll figure that out when I get to it. I've got parts, right? So maybe I should keep it. I got this one really, really cheap on eBay. I mean, whoever was selling it had no idea what they were selling. So I can afford to put the caps in here. I already have most of them anyway. I've got some Spragues right here. And these are Sprague 20s, I think. Yeah, 2500s, Sprague Atoms. These are good. These are really good caps. So I'll probably just pop those in, and then I also have an 8, and I don't have 70s. I ordered some 70s, and I think those are going to be Spragues or FTs. I'm not sure, but we're going to get this thing back to a spot where I can plug it in and test it. We'll put the dummy load resistor on the back. We'll hook it up to the oscilloscope right here, and then we'll see what it's doing. So that's the update on this amp. I'm not going to make a series out of this one because I'm working on my other series, but wanted to share with you a little bit about how these things work when you first get them. As far as identifying which schematic I have, I'm fairly sure it's the AB165. They were the most common ones for these amps. But I am going to trace components back and figure out if I do have the right one. And then I'll take it from there. There's really not much difference in these things. They're very, very subtle. For example, I'll show you this real quick. On the AB65, right here, see this 10K resistor right here? Let me take you to the same spot on the AA270. On the AA270, right here, it's different. There's something different happening here. I don't know what it is, but that's what I need to trace. If I find that I don't have this this there, then I know that it's an AB165. You know, so so that's kind of where we are now. Here's a 50 and a 5070 electrolytic cap. That very well could be the other 50 that I showed you on the bottom. I don't know yet. I'll figure that out. So anyway, I'm not going to make a series out of this. Just wanted to share with you the fact that you never power these things up when you get them. And I'm going to, excuse me, follow the advice that I hear Terry from D-Lab and Uncle Doug. When you install these things, always put a bead of hot glue underneath them so they don't bounce around. When you bounce these amps around, these things go like this, and eventually they're going to break. And you're going to have a problem. You're going to plug this thing in. It's not going to work well. It's going to short out stuff. It's going to sound like crap, and then you're going to damage a whole bunch of other things, including the transformer. So I would always put a drop of hot glue underneath these caps. These things are just flopping in the breeze here. Whoever did this had no idea what they were doing. So anyway, that's the long-winded story, and I'll see you when I get the rest of my components from my Fender Bassman 59. All right, that's it. Everybody have a great night. This is Ron.